into New York. Yo, into New York. Yo, into New York. To New York, to New York. With the yo, into New York. Yo, into New York. Yo, into New York. To New York, to New York.
And welcome to Crash Chords Autographs. Today, Matt welcomes Bob Salley, a writer from Boston, Massachusetts. Bob's latest projects include the comic book Salvagers, of which 3 issues are currently available, with the 4th on the way, and the weekly webcomic Jasper's Starlight, Tavern. You'll hear Matt and Bob chat about the Salvagers universe and its unique set of characters, his inspiration for creating Jasper's Starlight Tavern, his love of sci-fi, and the influence of music on the aesthetic of the Salvagers series. You can also hear about his Indiegogo campaign, a crowdfunding site spurred by a desire to give back to the fans. Finally, after some helpful advice on time management and how to conjure up the focus for projects you're most passionate about, here's presenting Matt Storm and Bob Salley.
Hey, Bob, thanks for taking the time to chat with me on my podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Matt.
My pleasure. So my first question actually is how you found us, because I know obviously you're a creator and writer of comics, so I have a few friends in that industry, and I'm curious if there was a direct person who referred you to the Crash Chords podcast.
You know, that's a great question. I'm always scouring through Facebook, just looking for different comic book shops that are accepting indie comics, and just going through and networking with so many different people, I come across so many other people who are looking to promote and help other people that are doing either indie comics or indie music. And somehow or another, I apologize that I was like that question, because whoever did send me to you, I would love to give them the proper props for that. But you know what? I believe it might have been Johnny C. I think he might have met you guys in at New York Comic Con.
Oh yeah.
He does Sartana, the comic book Sartana.
Mm-hmm.
So and we were just talking about New York Comic Con. We're both going out there, and I think we were really just looking for some kind of voice in and around New York. Because right now I've been doing podcasts out in the West Coast.
Sure.
I've done one in Australia, one in England, and I believe when we were discussing the fact that we were going to New York, he may have told me to contact you guys to kind of get the word around. I know New York's it's not until October, but I don't
Sure.
know. It's never too soon to start plugging yourself.
Sure, of course. I do know that you are friends with my good friend on Facebook, at least, Chuck Collins, who does the Comic Bounce. And so he was a guest on our other show. We do a weekly album review show that we do in New York. And him and our mutual friend Ed, who they're both comic artists, were guests on the show. And so it might have ended up in your feed through that as well.
Yep. Yeah, Chuck's awesome. He does the web comic. Not only do I do Salvagers, but we're also doing Jasper's Starlight Tavern, which is a bar on the edge of the galaxy not only is it within the Salvagers universe, but my friend Jason Sparish and I, who we went to high school together, we wanted to kind of make a web comic for sci-fi where anybody could be walking in. Anyone from, the Predator to an alien to Flash, singing his own song on karaoke night. So Chuck and I actually, he's a great guy, and I've gone to him a lot, just because he's been doing it a lot longer than I have, and he's got a really successful webcomic in Bounce.
Sure.
Telling him one of these times I want to have him bouncing at Jasper Starlight Tavern. So we're gonna try to work on that.
Awesome. That would be great. Yeah. I've been friends with Chuck because in New York we both are regulars at a bar called the Way Station, and
awesome.
I had met him there, and we'd become fast friends there. found we had a lot of similar interests. So that's cool to hear that you guys chat and that you might be working together. I think our audience will get excited about that. So
exactly. When we started doing this, I think we both were kind of like, we got to do this. We got to somehow or another we have to cross over, like where his webcomic, his bouncer kind of gets teleported out of his and then teleported into mine. So we're going to come up with something clever for it.
Neat. That's awesome. So I did have the ability. I did get a chance to read the first 3 issues of Salvagers, and thank you for sharing that with me. I love the book. I think it's fantastic. I, as someone who grew up watching Star Trek and Star Wars, and I'm also obviously, like anyone who likes sci-fi, a big fan of Firefly. I can see tons of influences both in the visuals of the comic as well as the writing that you do. I guess the first thing I want to ask about Salvagers is obviously the big question. How did you come up with the idea? I mean, doing a sci-fi comic book is not unheard of. There are quite a few of those. But what made you specifically think of this kind of universe and following this team specifically?
Well, my writing style all throughout high school, college has always been to take, I read so much like Raymond Carver, Buddy Norden, like the guys that just wrote real people doing not really extraordinary things, but it was all about the emotion that they put out on the page, and it was very much like the characters was what made the stories interesting, even if it was just a guy driving down the street, Right. So that was kind of my writing style, and obviously, I love sci-fi. I grew up with all of those, and Star Wars, Star Trek. I know I just said Star Trek. Star Trek. You could edit that out. That'd be really appreciative. But
we'll see. I'll hold it over your head, and I'll decide at the end of the interview.
I'm sure a lot of people will. But and I just loved it. I loved Aliens, and I loved Predator. I loved all of that.
Sure.
And I think what I loved the most about those movies was the characters. What made the characters do what they did. I think I was at a young age. I was always diving even more deep into who Han Solo is. Everybody was like a gunslinger, but I was always like, no, there's something. There's something more to this guy, and I think that's part. I think if George Lucas would have made Star Wars not just a movie, but if he had the ability to really dive into the characters, they would have. They're very interesting characters, but we would have learned so much more about them. And I know that there is the extended universe, but just that inner person that they are. So here I hit some writer's block, and I went back and I was like, okay, I like comic books and I like sci-fi. So I was watching Star Wars, and the Death Star blows up, and I'm thinking there's probably somebody out there. There's probably a crew out there that they're not saving the galaxy. They're not, stealing anything. They're just trying to make a buck in this world, in this galaxy, and they have to go clean that up. And from there, I thought to myself, like, I started thinking of characters. They were all human to begin with when I had it like in the notes. But then as I started writing it more and more, I thought it would be more interesting to expand on the characters if you gave them, if they were alien, and the alien makeup of their makeup would be to have certain, not abilities, but be able to, I always say, like, there's no spoiler. If you haven't read it, you should pick it up. Brigby, who is a lot of people's favorite, his face has the ability to regenerate. He gets his arm cut off, and it grows back. But in the process of his arm growing back, he gets really sick. And his rate, they have to take care of themselves because they could die from the process of their arm growing back. Tyr, the big guy in the crew, you'll find out as the story goes on that his planet, which it became uninhabitable, but through thousands and thousands of years, his planet rained glass. So his skin is virtually impenetrable, and he's got a very almost helmet type exoskeleton, which makes him kind of like a Luke Cage type character.
Sure.
That's his. It's not a mutant gene or anything. It's just that's his that's his species, and
right.
Through evolution, they've become like they've had these abilities. So, but with their abilities, there becomes weaknesses in their abilities. So, I wanted to have something kind of cool with that. So I made them aliens, and I wanted to give the artist George Acevedo like some aliens to work with, and say like, let's create a new alien species. Like you have Vulcans, well now we have Graxons, which Brigsby is. We have Typernians, which Tyr is, and then as the story goes on, we have Klandarians and Shannings, and so it was fun to kind of be able to not just create a comic book, but also to create new species, a new alien life. So that's why I kind of decided to do that, to make them alien instead of human, and just to kind of, just to have fun with that.
Sure.
Yeah, and then in that, these guys aren't, they're not a rebel group. They're not, they're not out trying to, steal all this weaponry and everything. But I guess in the first story arc, they actually are. Put my foot in my mouth. But they work for a company. They have special skills, which brought them to Harrier Salvage and Rescue, and they are the division of salvaging, and they go out, they get commissioned to do a job, and they go out and they know what is valuable and what's not valuable, and they strip apart a ship that's that's been abandoned in space, and they're able to make a buck in that. And they, just like you and I and everybody else, when you work for a company, sometimes you have to work with somebody who you don't like, and you have to get along with them to finish the job. And that's kind of what they're doing. And they, even though you might not like the person you're working with, if you work with them long enough, you become like family. And that's what I think they are. And they're learning to work with each other. And you'll see that as the story goes on, that they'll as much as they're pains in each other's asses, they'll do anything that they need to do to protect each other. It's almost like when you think of like your sister or your brother, if anybody else picks on them, you're like, no, I'm the only one that can pick on them. So they have this type of family camaraderie.
My next question is, when it comes to writing, do you find yourself someone who needs to sit in like a quiet room and focus on just writing, or do you rely on music or TV or something in the background to kind of get your brain going? How does your writing process kind of work?
I have a 2-year-old, and I work in a city, and the commute, is I'm on a subway, so I try to write anytime I can. I have a 9-to-5 job, so it's early mornings, late nights. If I use on the iPhone, you have that note tablet.
Sure.
I use that constantly. I'm always on there. Like if I'm on the T or the subway, I'm constantly writing notes in there. I have a tablet, I have a sketch pad in my book that I'll just write notes in there. And then I'll wake up at 4:30 in the morning, get a cup of coffee, sit on the couch, and I'll get to work and start writing it. And my process is to write the grand, in an outline. It'd be like, okay, I'm going to write the 3 acts, and the epilogue would be like, okay, I'm starting here. I got my midpoint here, my endpoint here, and then from there I just keep expanding it to, all right, I'm going to, page breakdown, and then within the pages it's the panel breakdown. But I think I don't really listen to music as much while I'm writing, but music is definitely a huge part while I'm, either walking to work. I'll be listening to a song, and that song it'll hit a chord for a certain character or a certain scene, and immediately, like, my mind is going, and I'm thinking, like, how is the mood set? Who's the character? What's going on? And the music just really draws you through it. And then I'm on the tee, and I got that notebook out and writing down just to make sure you capture it. To say, like, when you finally get home and you bring the laptop out, you don't want to, you're like, shit. What the hell was I thinking? What was that song? I'm going to play it again. But I think if anything, like having a 9-to-5 job, it's a crazy process because you try to figure out how to write when you have time, and a lot of times you don't have the time. So I always tell people, and you talk to people who are doing this, and they're like, yeah, I was going to write, but I started playing Arkham Asylum. And I next thing I know, it was 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, get rid of that. Get rid of the PlayStation 4. This is your Batman. This is your Skyrim and God of War. Like writing this out. Like if I can spend 2 or 3 hours in the morning writing some outline and getting some dialogue and some scenes, that to me, I used to play games all the time. I love Resident Evil. Batman was awesome. I loved playing Batman, but this is my new game. Like trying to come up with an awesome comic book, and it's all I have time. When you have a wife and a kid and a 9-to-5 job, you really have to pick and choose. What you're gonna do with your free time, as little as it is.
Oh yes, I understand. As someone who's recently married, works 9 to 5, and has a website and 2 podcasts, and still tries to play video games. Yeah, it's not like the reason our website has been mostly podcasts for the last couple of months to a year is because I used to write a lot of music articles, and then I dove back into video games or was getting married, and time kind of gets cut in half or thirds even when you're planning and working on so many other things. So I totally understand that. If it weren't for me relying on music in my everyday life, and I listen to it on my way into work, on my way home from work, when I'm at work, I wouldn't really have time otherwise to get into it. But I'm also the kind of person, because of how I listen to music, I could just sit at my computer not really doing anything except listening to music for hours and just get sucked into that. So this comic that you're working on now, you said that you're constantly working on it and writing and finding time to write whenever you can. The story that you're building for these characters, does it have an end game? Do you know where they're going to end up many issues from now, or are you just kind of leaving that open-ended and just figuring it out as you go and it evolves as you go?
There are times where I have it in my notes. Like there are times where I'm like, this is where I'm going to end it. But I don't know. I always think of Rick Remender's Fear Agent, and when he ended it, I was like, man, I wish he wouldn't have ended it. I wish he would have kept it going. Like it was so awesome. But I mean, and I understand for him, he got the Marvel deal, so it was kind of like, look, I want to end this and move on, but there are times where I think I don't ever want to end this, and I have so many different characters where I think maybe the characters could end, but the story doesn't need to end. The Salvagers doesn't need to end. There could be, you could go back in time, you could go ahead, you could have a whole new crew. There are times where I think there would be a moment where, there's a new crop coming in. And maybe Brigby is there, that veteran with the company, and he kind of gets serious and and thinks back to all the mischief that he caused, but there's definitely I definitely think about ending it where way down the line, because I'm having way too much fun doing it now.
Sure.
Honestly, right now we're midway through issue 4 of volume 1, and issue 4 finishes volume 1, and then we'll put it out as a trade paperback. Issue 2 is already written, and the artist is starting to develop that and develop the characters concept, some of the characters that haven't been seen yet, and volume 3 is already outlined. And then after that, I have notes for volume 4. So there's definitely a long path that I have to take these guys on.
Sure.
My dream and my goal is to have an extensive library of Salvagers where these characters are just iconic.
Sure.
I've always said this when George Acevedo, the artist, when he and I first started writing this. When we were doing the concept art for Ronick and Tyr and Tegan and Brigby, I told him one thing. I was like, when you're drawing them and you're thinking about them, just keep thinking in your head iconic. Like, my desire, my love would be for 30 years from now, for like people to be putting Ronik in memes with Han Solo and Mal and Picard and Kirk, being like, who's the best captain, and people to be debating on why Ronik is better captain than those guys. Like, I would be like, I can die now. I'm good. So that, and I think that's the care that I put into it, is that I don't want to half-ass this. Like, I don't want, and I think when you're doing an indie comic, you get a very small chance to capture somebody who could be out there buying Marvel, could be buying DC, could be buying Saga. So you get a very small window of chance to give them a comic, a 24-page comic, and by the time they're done reading it, for them to say, "Shit, I like this. I want to read more." You got to put, like, that's the way you got to look at it. You got to put the heart and soul into it, because there's so much. It's a saturated market where if there's one little thing about it that they don't like, it's all right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna get the Avengers. So it is like it's you really got to bust your ass. You got to, and I always say, like, you got to always think. There's somebody else out there working harder than me. I know it's it's an age-old saying, but it's so true.
Yeah.
So many people out there doing indie comics, and you gotta think: am I working as hard as I can? But at the same time, you gotta love it. You gotta love what you're doing, and right now I do. Like, I could work on this all day, and I'd be happy doing it.
I think that's really
I do it for
key.
free. So it's one of those things like where I'm paying for it to do it. So it's a love of mine. It's my hobby.
Sure. So since you're the creator of these characters and you probably know them better than anybody else does, if you had to pick, if Brigby were to discover the pantheon of Earth music, what do you think would be his favorite band of all time if he had to pick one or a few?
You know what? I feel like that he would like punk rock.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that he would just kind of, something tells me that he would just love the chaos of punk rock, I think it would be something that would really intrigue him to be like. Brigby's the type of person that he knows everything there is to know about quantum physics and all this, and it's so easy to him, and he can put order into, like, he can make sense of something like that. But I think if he were to listen to punk rock, he would look at it, and he might like look at the stereo or the speaker that's coming from, and it would confuse the shit out of him. But he would be like intrigued by it to try to figure out like how it works. That would be something, and that's just off the top of my head. I just feel like that would be Brigby. He would be like, this is chaos. How do I fix it? How do I make sense out of that? So definitely it would have to be punk rock for Brigby.
Okay. So we were talking a little earlier about the webcomic that you work on as well, which is a little bit, it exists in the same world as the Salvagers, but it's more tongue-in-cheek, and it's a reference for pop culture as a whole. How did the idea to start the webcomic come about? Is it just you wanted to play with your universe, but not in a very serious way, and kind of take a more tongue-in-cheek approach?
Well, what's funny is, so when I started doing the Salvagers, I started, I was on Facebook, and I was talking to people, and people were reading it, and the people would be like, "Hey, I'd love to be in the comic." And I did do a contest where I had, send me your best picture of the Salvager, and you could win, a free cameo because in issue 2 we had a bar scene.
Right.
So people started sending me stuff in, and we put them in the bar scene, but then more people started sending me stuff in, and I was like, well, I don't have them in the bar scene until issue 6. So, and then the contest was over, but I was like, I really want to, I like this, and it was really popular, and I was like, I want to put people in, and I want to give people an opportunity to, to be a part of it. And my buddy and I were at a bar, and we were sitting at the bar. There was nobody in there, but there was this bartender back there. And we're talking about all this different comics book stuff. Jason Sparrow, the guy that I co-created this with. And he and I grew up together, and we were just comic book geeks. We drew stuff. And so we're sitting at the bar, and we're just talking about comic book stuff. And finally, the bartender, who looks exactly like, if anybody wants to, if you're listening to this and you want to get a visual of the bartender, go to Starlight Tavern, go to Facebook and look up Starlight Tavern, and you'll see the bartender, the human bartender. That is a spitting image of the bartender, my friend now, Mike Ray, and in the comic his name is Mike Deathray, but he comes over and he's like, enough. I can't listen to this anymore. Like he's like, and then he started going off, and he was putting his 2 cents in. He's like, you guys have been sitting there talking about this stuff, and I'm trying to keep my mouth shut, but that's it. Like, you just got fed up. He's like, and then we just sat there, and we just started ripping off comic book stuff and sci-fi stuff, and in the bar that he worked at was right across from where I was living. So I was like, shit, man, I'm anytime I had a free moment, I was like, I'm going to go over and hang out with the bartender and, and talk comics and get geeked out with him.
Sure.
So then again, like I was like, you know what, if I came up with a webcomic where I could put something out each week, then I could bring other people, friends of mine or fans, I could bring them into it, because obviously it takes me like 3-4 months to get a comic out. So I could, each week I could get somebody in the comic. So I started playing around with it, and I found a great artist in Juan Khalid, and he's amazing. I got my friend Don Mathias, who's the colorist, and again, my best friend growing up, Jason Sparrow, he helps me write it, and it worked out, and I'm so proud of it. We're actually doing an Indiegogo right now. We offer it free on the website, starlighttavern.com, and also we post it for free every Wednesday on Facebook, which is facebook.starlighttavern.com. But we're doing an Indiegogo right now because we figured there's people out there that follow us, and we wanted to give them a chance to get an exclusive print copy of it. People are always asking us, can I get it in print? And we don't do it in print. But I figured with this Indiegogo, this will give us a chance to raise some money to print it. Do the T-shirt. We're doing beer steins since it's a bar. And we're going to get, some posters where the Mike Ray guy will sign those for people. And it's basically, it's just to help keep it alive and to keep it moving, because it's something that, again, it's another thing that we do for ourselves, and we put it out there for free and just try to get more fans, and we hope that people are entertained by it.
Well, that's awesome. That's really great. Make sure that you send me an email after we get off the phone with that Indiegogo link, because this interview is going to go up. People are listening to us on Tuesday as they're listening to us talk. It'll go up on Tuesday.
Awesome.
So I'd be happy to
spread that around. And I actually just launched it today, so it's up for, I think, 45 days.
Great.
And and really it's something, because we're going to keep doing it. But it's more as a gift to fans to get something physical from a webcomic. I think there's a lot of webcomics out there that people wouldn't mind having, I always say, it'd be awesome for a bathroom read. If you
sure.
In print, sit in your bathroom and flip through it every now and then.
So I guess from here I want to ask kind of a little bit about your background. So you talked a little bit about growing up with the sci-fi stuff that you like. Did you always write since you were little? Is that something that you just did in school as a kid, or was it something that you kind of found a love with as you got older?
Ever since I can remember, I was writing stories. I think it started when I had Star Wars guys and G.I. Joe guys. I first started playing out the stories and doing I had them, but they were doing their own thing.
Sure.
And Boba Fett was a good guy. I loved. He was a good guy, and I kind of played out my own stories. But then when I don't even know what grade it was, but you had to write your own stories and you had to draw them. I don't know if you remember those booklets, but you had the top part was blank, so you could draw, and the bottom part had the line, so you could write the story.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I was always writing action stuff. and it was so bad. And thinking back to the writing that you did, it was horrible. But you write what you know. Like when you're a little kid, you don't know anything. So I think as far back as I can remember, I've always been trying to create stories. And one thing that I did as a kid is we would get G.I. Joe guys and Star Wars guys, and you could take them apart and put them back together with different arms. You could take 5 of them apart and then just start making your own. And we used to do that all the time.
Sure.
I feel like we invented doing that. Like now you just take Legos and you do it all mix match. But we would make our own. Yeah, we'd take G.I. Joe guys and we'd make our own characters out of them. So I think ever since I can remember, I've always wanted something that was my own to create and to be able to look at and be like, this didn't exist until I created it. And it's a wild feeling. I have a daughter, and it's like. I feel like people would be like, that's a messed up thing to say, but I love my daughter. She is my creation, but the comic book is kind of like these guys are, they're kind of my kids.
Sure.
When you look at Brigby, and I feel like I've been with them so long. There's times where when I write, it's a shock to me too. Like it's not me, it's just me putting it on paper, but it's them doing it.
Sure.
There's times where I'm like, geez, Christ, Brigby, what the hell are you doing? But it fits, and it makes sense. You're like, that's something he would do because that's his character.
We touched a little bit earlier on how you'll listen to music on your commute and when you have some downtime, sometimes that inspires your writing. Do you have any favorite bands that you can think of in particular that you listen to more often than others?
Right now, so my all-time favorite bands are Radiohead and Pink Floyd. But right now, I'm listening to a lot of Tool, and I think it's just that the 13th Step, and I can't, the name of their albums are always so whack. But I feel like that I have this playlist and it just has a bunch of Tool and Perfect Circle on it, and I think the tone of their music. It fits the tone of what's going on in the Salvagers world. It's very dark. These characters, they have a lot of skeletons in their closet. Obviously it's not something you want to do. You don't want to become a Salvager, but through different life choices and what's going on in your world, you end up just the reason that they're there. They all have their own reason that they're there doing the job they're doing.
Sure.
But I think the tone of some of the songs, like Pet and the Counting Bodies Counting Bodies Like Sheep to the Rhythm of the War Drum. Songs like that, when you listen to it, you're just in my mind, I get a sense of I'm in their world, and it helps me understand what they're doing and how they're feeling. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't listen to it while I'm writing it, but when I'm walking back and forth to work, when I listen to that, that's where I think a lot of inspiration comes from Tool.
Cool. Maynard, as far as singers and writers go for music, he's one of the most eclectic and unique. And while I've always liked Tool and A Perfect Circle, I haven't always listened to every one of their albums, but I know their stuff and I like it. He's definitely someone who stands out, and that I agree wholeheartedly, that kind of looming darkness, but I always felt like with A Perfect Circle, there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, at least in there's more irony in his lyrics than in the Tool stuff, which is just kind of really dark. And you get a sense of that in your book, in the comic, because, reading issue 1, and even especially issue 2, when Brigby is kidnapped or abducted, he's not scared. He's cracking jokes. He's kind of being snarky and an ass, because even though he knows he's in a dire situation, that's the defense mechanism. And I like that kind of tone in all of the comics, at least 3 issues I read. There's a little sense of humor within this dark world. It's almost like a dark comedy where they know what their life is, and so they at least make the best of it. And so there are cracks and jokes, within the writing that kind of, give it more heart and emotion and a little bit of humor too.
Absolutely, yeah. I appreciate you saying that, yeah.
So, as we discussed earlier, between your other child, the comic book, and your day job, you don't have a ton of time. But do you have any other hobbies you like to engage in when you do have some time? It sounds like you used to play a lot of video games, but now that's kind of, you don't have much time for that anymore.
I played a lot of video games when I was single, and anybody who's listening when you sing, you come home from work and you crack open a beer and you hit play, and usually you turn on your TV, and half the time I'm almost 40 years old, so there were times you'd be like, well, I'm just gonna pause this. I don't even want to have to go through the whole process of loading the shit up again. So you'd come home and you turn your TV on, and you just see that first-person shooter, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's right, I remember where I am now. And then the next thing you know, it's midnight, and you're like, I gotta get up to bed. So I definitely lived that type of life, and I used to golf, but right now it's a lot of this, and I play chess. I think that I tell my wife knows it all the time. Like my mind is always working, and it's always somewhere in this comic book, and it's tough, because you're a family man and you have a wife and kid, but and obviously there's times of where you're not, like you're encapsulated with what's going on with your family, but
sure.
If we're sitting there on the couch watching something, it's somewhere in there, even if it's just a speck. So my college roommate, Mike, and I, he's a much better chess player than I, and whenever we play, I noticed that I'd always be losing, and it's because I'd be half in, half out.
Right.
So now when I play chess, it clears my head, and I'm focused on everything that's going on the board, and like what move I made, what possible moves I can make. And it is a great kind of release from that noise in your head that's always, what you're doing, that, and the next thing, the next story, the next, scene, dialogue, whatever it is, it's just this constant mess that you have on there that you're always trying to make order of. So every once in a while I do need to, I just kind of step back and I'll focus on a chess game that I play with my old college roommate, and he still beats me, but it's my new my zen, if you will, is to play a little chess on my downtime.
I feel like something like that is definitely important, because if you're always on, you'll burn yourself out. You need something that's going to clear your head, and even if it's not video games or it's not TV, you need some kind of task that'll kind of let you just kind of chill and relax. I played chess my whole life. My grandfather always beat the crap out of me. I was never better than him. I enjoy playing it now, and I actually play it with my nephew and niece. And I agree. I feel like chess is one of those games that you can't not be invested. So you either stop playing because you're not invested, or you get completely invested and allow it to kind of wipe your slate clean and focus on that work, on that game in front of you specifically. I was kind of fascinating watching like professional chess matches and how fast they move and how clearly they're thinking and how far ahead of that move they're already thinking. It's always been kind of amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, in me, like I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I have a whole day to make this move, and I'm like, I cherish that move. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? And then and they go to the board and I'm like, all different types of moves, and then I end up making a move and I'm like, shit. What did I do that for?
Yeah, of course. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and then you make the move, and you're like, oh crap.
But the best is when when my buddy, like, I'll make a move, and then before the game's over, he just messages me, "Good game," and I'm like, God damn it! I mean,
that's like I used to play. I don't know if you remember GoldenEye for N64 back in the day, the old school first-person shooter. So I had a friend of mine who, when I would play it with him, he would run and dodge you until you emptied your clip, and because it took you so long to reload, he would just say the words click, 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 click as you were out of bullets and then kill you. Like he would wait till you empty your click, insult you, and then kill you. And I'm like, really? Come on.
That game was that movie sucked, but the game was like it was up there with Tomb Raider. You know, where that was like the first time where you were able to play a game, well, not Tomb Raider, but where you were able to be in a world with other people.
Well, yeah, and it also kind of gave a whole new meaning to shooters, you know. That was kind of like the precursor to, like, without GoldenEye, we would have never gotten Halo or Call of Duty or any of those other games, because it's kind of the first of its kind.
But see, you know, the game I loved was Siphon Filter.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm sure if anybody's like 20 years old, they're going to be like, what the hell?
Yeah, what's a Siphon Filter?
Yeah, Siphon Filter, that was like what really got me into playing games. I loved it. And then after that, it was, you know, Metal Gear. But yeah, that GoldenEye, I played GoldenEye. I wasn't good at it, but I played. I remember when we were in college, we were playing Tomb Raider. And if anybody like watched us now, and I always think back, my roommate comes home and he has Tomb Raider and he has the book, and one of us is sitting, you know, one person would be sitting there playing it, and the other person would be sitting there reading the guidebook and be like, okay, I'm here, and he'd be like, okay, if you go up to this wall and you go over here to the secret, you know, and it was like, you think about now, like nobody does that, but back then you buy the book, and there were times I'd be like, I don't think I could finish this game without the book.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, back then everything wasn't online, so you couldn't just Google a solution.
Yeah,
like
now, watch a YouTube video of it.
Yeah, like now I'm playing the newest Batman game in the Batman series, Arkham Knight. I have it for my PS4. And like now when I get stuck, it's literally, oh, Google this puzzle. Oh, that's the answer. Okay. Whereas when Arkham Asylum came out, I mean, it was still online, but like there were still guidebooks and you were still kind of looking up that kind of stuff. But now it's like everything's online. They don't sell instruction manuals. They don't sell guidebooks. Everything's online now.
You know, and to go with the music, I bought Doom and OK Computer at the same time.
Oh, sure.
I would mute Doom, and I would just listen to OK Computer while I played Doom.
Nice work. That's
like it was fitting. Like it just fit the. Which, and if you can even, I don't know if you ever listened to OK Computer, it's my all-time favorite album.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you listen to some of the songs, like, you know, there's a xylophone and you're walking around playing Doom, it just, for some reason, it was like, this works.
Yeah, sure. I used to do that a lot, too, if I was playing, like, later on, like, a game like Halo, and I was playing it online. I wouldn't listen to people talking trash online. I would just play online with it muted, and then have, like, a high-energy metal mix of music in the background playing while I was playing it.
People off for yelling at you.
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously, we were talking earlier about how you're pretty much in your headspace kind of already know a trajectory more or less for at least this early part of Salvagers and where it's going for the next trade or two. Do you have any other projects that you're thinking about working towards, or are you kind of all in with Salvagers and your webcomic? Is there any other projects you're looking to dabble in?
Yeah, right now I'm writing a story. It's a post-apocalyptic story about a young girl. I don't want to get too much into it because right now I'm just into scripting. I have issue 1 scripted, and then issue 2 I'm working on right now. And
cool.
I've already got an art team set to work on it. It's just it's going to be they'll probably start working on it in September.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's a working title called The Palace, and it's got some Arthurian tale overtones to it. But again, I don't want to get too much into it. But I have that I'm working on. And then with my publisher, Think Like Production, Ruben Romero, he and I are working on doing a kind of a swordsman type story. And again, that'll be a mini series that if hopefully we take off and if it works, we can create more and more stories. But yeah, right now I have there's the Salvagers that's already written, so it's more or less letting the artists do their work. Constantly writing with my friend Jason Sparrow. We're constantly writing scripts for Starlight Tavern. Now I'm working on it's a like 16th century swordsman tale and this post-apocalyptic tale of this little girl. That I'm really excited about both of them, and I think that they'll be a hit. At least I hope they are. And those stories were not, again, when I started working on them, Salvagers was definitely something where I was like, I want to keep this open-ended, and I want this to become, like that Star Trek kind of series where it's ongoing, and even when it's over, there could be more and more. And I really pushed myself to get a fan base that falls in love with it. But these would be more like mini-series one-offs, of course, unless it if it got very popular, I would keep it open to either go backwards or forwards with it and create more.
Cool. It sounds like you're the kind of guy who doesn't really like to do anything. He likes to sit around and do nothing. He's never busy. He's never working on anything. Sounds like you don't really have anything to do. It sounds like you and I have a similar work ethic, as in that when you're not working on something, you either think about how you can still be working on it or what else you can work on. Yeah,
well, that's how we started working on Salvagers Deliverance. That's a separate. It's in the Salvagers universe, obviously, but it's a different crew. They're actually a freelance crew, and I was done writing issue 4, and I was like, you know what, I want to take a break. And I had these awesome cosplayers send me pictures of them them dressed as Salvagers, Scarlet Fly and Tim Wiley, Dave Walton. They all sent me pictures of themselves, and Dave Walton had like an AK-47, and I was like, yeah, you win. But it was a lot of fun. So I said, you know what, I had an artist do up sketches of them as Salvagers, and I loved the sketches, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a story for these guys, and I'm going to make it a comic. It was, and on the art teams I have are wicked. Like for Salvagers, the original series, I got George Acevedo is in Los Angeles, DeSica is in France, and HDE, who's my editor, he's in England. For the Deliverance, the artist Luca Cicchiti, he's in Italy. The colorist Oliver is in France, and again, I used HDE. I use HDE for all my lettering. I feel like he's really good. He's a guy that you just kind of set him and forget him. You're like, here it is, and he goes, and every once in a while he'll send you just a page of explanation of what he did, and he flips through it, and you're like, okay, good. But he's a lot of fun, so I like to keep him around. And if he's listening, HDE, he's good for shits and giggles. But it's awesome, and that's the power of the internet and the power of Facebook, is that you can find awesome talent from all over. Oliver, who colored the Deliverance, he took an image off of my Facebook page, colored it, and sent it back to me, and I loved it. I was like, tired. So that was something I was like, you know what, let's do it, let's put it together, and it turned out to be great. I love the story. I love where it's going, and we're starting to work on book 2. And cool. So I am. I'm always working on something. And
well, I agree that like the internet is just remarkable the way you can, I mean, like for me, my website started as a blog, and like I wrote about music once in a while, and then I started doing a podcast, and then after doing a podcast for a few years, I started a second podcast, and then I started writing more stuff. And it's just one of those things where, you can connect and reach people so much easier now because there's an audience, or if there's an interest, they can find it. I mean, look at this. Like, you're someone who, a month ago I didn't know, and then just reached out to me, and we made a connection, and I read your comic and loved it, and now here we are doing a podcast. And it was all through the internet. We have not met in person, and although if you're ever in New York, I would love to hang out in person, but it was just one of those things where just the right people, the right time, and the right source can make a connection that you couldn't do even 10 or 15 years ago.
No, absolutely. I mean, if this was me trying to do this back in 1995, there's no way I could do it. I wouldn't know where to find an artist.
Yeah.
And there would be I'd have to walk into comic book shop, and they'd be like, yeah. But there'd be nowhere for me to sell it. So it is a great time to be an independent comic book creator. So it's just because the world is so small with the internet that you can. I mean, we have this right now. It's translated in France, in Germany, and I've sold this in 20 states and 4 different countries. It's kind of surreal to see how powerful that is to be able to spread it out so far and wide just by, throwing some stuff on Comixology or, we are on Comixology, and
sure.
we also have a big cartel site, which is www.salvagers.bigcartel.com. And, we've shipped all over the world on that. And you didn't have that in the past. So just by posting that on my Facebook page, I might get somebody in Australia who's looking for a comic, and and they're the ones that are the most appreciative, because I think they're like, wait a minute, you ship to Australia? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, gee, okay, yeah, give me all. Nobody ships to Australia. I'm like, yeah, if I didn't ship to Australia, you wouldn't know about it, and you'd be like, all right, screw you. So yeah, it is the power of the internet, and I think it's also the power of the independent creators community.
Sure.
There's so many people out there that are awesome. They're all looking to help each other out. People like you doing podcasts to put people like us on to spread the word. There's a lot more good people out there than there are bad, and and it's easy to differentiate them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, most of the artists that I've spoken to, musicians, creators, comedians, they're all mostly independent artists who just want to share a stage and get information out. And, it's always interesting to me how tight-knit an indie community can really be, and how much people just want to help each other and help make more stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt. It's it puzzles me, the people that look at it as, well, I don't want to share yours because then that's taken away from me. And it's like, no, that's not it. We should all be sharing each other's projects and everything. It's not like if I share Bounce, it's not like the person that I'm sharing Bounce, they're not going to be like, oh well, I got Bounce, I don't need Starlight Tavern. If I my good friend Quinn McGowan is doing this superhero comic, and it's like if I share his, it's not like people are going to be like, oh, okay, I like this, I don't like yours anymore. It's, people that are into indie comics, they love indie comics, that's their thing. So they just want to find out more and more. They want to expand their indie library. So it's and people know that, the indie creators know what they're doing, and it's always good to network and share people's stuff. And I always tell people, if I meet you, I'll probably tell 4 or 5 people, like, hey, check these guys out. If you contact them, tell them I sent you, and get on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way. It's fun. It's fun for me. Like, I know Chuck before Bounce existed, and so once Bounce started coming out, and I would share it a lot, and then eventually I started seeing friends of mine who don't know Chuck and hadn't told about the comic sharing the comic. So they just saw it in my feed, liked it, and then jumped on it. And it's awesome how stuff like that can gain speed. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. I love the comic. I'm looking forward to the 4th issue and the first trade. When do you have a release date for the 4th issue yet, or not yet? It's still in the works.
Well, so right now we're more than halfway done it and finished it. And George just sent me a page today, which I exclusively shared with our Kickstarter backers, which was
nice.
When I woke up this morning and I saw the page, I got goosebumps, and I was just like, it's awesome. And the people that are listening that are Kickstarter backers, they know what I'm talking about. I like to give them stuff like that, first. They deserve.
Sure.
And eventually we'll put it out there. But we're more than halfway finished it. Being realistic, I'm looking at the end of August, beginning of September for a release date.
Okay.
And again, we're always putting stuff out every Wednesday. If you go onto Facebook and you look for Jasper's Starlight Tavern, we're always putting new stuff out there. And we're always working, and I always tell people, and if you're an artist out there and you're looking to get your work seen, I tell people you can find us on Salvagers in Facebook, and you can message me. Send if you want to doodle up a picture of our characters, and if you have a DeviantArt page, I will anything that anybody sends me, I will post on our page, and I put the link up for the DeviantArt page. I'm always about artists being seen. I know how hard it is for artists to get their stuff out there and to to build a following. So we have 10,000 likes on our page now, which I'm pretty proud of.
That's amazing.
And anybody, I always tell anybody, if you wanna send us something, put it in there. If we just in issue 3. At the end of issue 3, we put in 4 pieces that were just fan art that people sent to us. We put them in there with their names on it in the back of our comic book, and we're going to do that again for issue 4 in the trade paperback. So anything that I can do to get artists' work out there, and it's always I always have fun seeing different artists do our characters.
Sure.
There's no wrong way to do it. It's it's that age-old adage where people say like, hey, when it comes to art, I remember when I suck at art, and my art teacher was like, well, there's nothing wrong. Like, you can't mess up art. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I just did. But any way that your style is, I want to see you do my characters in any style that you have, and we'll post it on the page. We'll tag you on it, and we'll put a link to your website on it. So yeah. Awesome. Check us out and like our page and see what we're doing. And we're always putting some contests out there where people can win issues or T-shirts or prints signed. So we try. I always look at it as we're trying to have fun.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and fun is important. I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're working on something that's creative content, it has to be fun. That's the absolute must.
Exactly.
Well, I thank you for taking the time, Bob. This has been a pleasure. I'm stoked to read the next issue. You definitely made a fan out of me. I will definitely direct to the Indiegogo after you send me the link when this goes up on Tuesday on our website. I'll put the link for the Indiegogo. I'll link to the Facebook pages so everyone can check everything out. It's been a blast talking to you. And if you're in New York in October for Comic-Con, definitely reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you again.
I definitely will, Matt. I would love to. Yeah, I'll be there for all 4 days, and I'll definitely look for you. And again, thanks for having me on. It was a good time talking.
My pleasure. You definitely have to come back as those other projects come out.
Absolutely. Maybe I can get one of my artists on with us too.
All right, that'd be awesome. All right, take care, Bob.
All right, Matt. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right, bye.
If you enjoyed these interviews, please subscribe to this and the Crash Chords podcast on iTunes, where you can also rate us and review us. You can also like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Crash Chords Web, our Tumblr, and our YouTube channel. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post in the comment area below each post. And keep the discussion going, because remember, music is life, and life is good.